But there were no complaints that you weren't on last week?
Um, Hey, welcome along. Yes, and to answer Rod's question, he was asking as we were starting. No one mentioned anything about me being on, not being on, but I had put it in the weekly email thing, so
You did.
hopefully people realised. I was, don't know if did I say where I was?
You said you're at a meeting.
I was at a meeting. So I was at Easter Madness meeting, or tuning in online to an Easter Madness meeting. So joining in that sort of fun for next year to work out what's going on and how we might be involved. But anyway, to what we're meant to be. So if you know young people in high school, keep an ear out for Easter Madness this year. But we're exploring some of Andrew Root and Blair Bertrand's When Church Stops Working. And so we talked a bit about 2 weeks ago that often the idea in the church is the problem is that we've got less people and less resources and less power, and that to counter that, we need to get more busy, do more activities that bring people in and be more innovative. And Andy Root and Blair suggest, well, maybe that isn't the problem at all. And maybe the problem is that we live in this secular age that Charles Taylor talks about. And I don't know if I've got the books here. I was very glad I went to a week-long intensive with Andrew Root down at UTC, the Theological College in Sydney, back in 2017. Is that it? Whenever we were there on the day that Trump was inaugurated, what a lovely day. And one person there was an avid Trump supporter. It's like, oh, joy, this will be a fun week, won't it? I know who I'm not sitting next to for lunch any day. But yes, and so he was talking about Charles Taylor's, particularly drawing on Charles Taylor's book, completely out of a Secular Age. So, and those of you who were there on Sunday morning, this is a repeat for you, but neither of you two were. So Charles Taylor, but I think we've talked about it before. But anyway, Charles Taylor basically tries to explore the fact that in the 1500s, it was pretty much impossible to believe that there wasn't a God. There's a statue in Italy to one particular person who believed there was no God. You know, it was so radical that he got a statue. Now, 500 years later, you're almost thought as an idiot if you believe there's a God. So how do you go from one to the other? And so Charles Taylor tries to map that out and suggests the things that have changed. And so last week we talked about there's that move and splitting of the sacred and the secular. So they become two very separate things. And if you look back in the 1500s, they're very much linked. If you look to numerous other countries around the world, so this is a Westernish sort of phenomenon, you know, there's still that sense of faith and the world or secular and sacred are the same. So, you know, think of some Muslim countries and stuff like that. Of course, you follow the Muslim laws. You know, that's just natural because the two are together. Whereas in the Western world, you know, we hear all the media going, oh, this politician, you know, they're coming from a faith background, you know, that should be separated. So that's part of this secular age. The other key thing they draw out is the separation of public and private. And very much, and as you follow it through, I think we mentioned it last week and Rod said, oh yes, the Protestant type thing. And that's very much the Protestant has gone. Faith is all about my response and my decision, which means, of course, if you think about lots of people at church, you know, probably doesn't apply to the very older generation, but for lots of people, I come to church for what do I get out of it? It's about my faith. I'm not coming so that I can worship with others. I'm coming so that I can learn something or I can get something out of this. So there's that change. So their response to that, as we talked about last time, is the secular age encourages us to get busy. It wants us to be busy, busy, busy. So maybe the response to that is actually to stop. And part of the problem with the secular age is we've lost the idea of God and the immanence of God and the connection with God, and God being, I can never remember the word they use. Transcendence. Let's see. It's like we were talking in scripture when you, and the question was, have you ever found something with importance? And someone said, so I was looking for it, and then I went and looked somewhere else, and I immediately found the thing I was looking for originally. It's, when you stop thinking about it, you think of it. So, we've lost that sense of transcendence, of God being out there, and how do we connect with God? So maybe that's what we actually need to do, which is why I'm passionate about the reflective space and things like that, is how do we provide this space for people to connect with God and to experience some of that transcendence. Those spiritual activities don't work for everyone, and that's fine. But for some people, it's like, I'll do this, and actually I have this experience of God being greater. So yes, how do we slow down? How do we wait? How do we do that? And I think we talked a little bit last time about how they draw on Acts and say instead of having the church start in Acts 2 with the coming of the Spirit, starting in Acts 1, where Jesus says, wait, and the Spirit will come. And then when you have that mindset and you look at the rest of Acts, there's a whole heap of, Peter's up having a snooze when he has the vision and realizes he needs to go and see Cornelius. Paul and Silas, I think by that stage, are trying to go to all these places in Asia Minor, and the Spirit keeps saying, no, no, no. And then a man from Macedonia comes and says, come with us, come with me, sort of thing. Who, just as a totally random and unconnected thing, who my New Testament lecturer at college suggested might be Luke, because suddenly after that event, Acts turns into a we for a little while. So Luke's obviously with them, and so he suggested maybe Luke is the person from Macedonia, but no real evidence for that, and no reflection on what we're talking about. But these things are in my head, and so they pop out. So Andy Root and Blair suggest that maybe there are two mistakes in the church. That we think we should have no tension. Everything should be nice. It should be peaceful in the church. We want it all to be running smoothly. That's how a church should be, shouldn't it? It's how I love when people go, oh, there's no politics in the church. It's like, of course there's not. Keep several times over the last few years in ministry team meetings will be like, okay, let Richard teach you politics 101. This is what we need to do, and these people need to hear this being said to them, and whatever. And so they suggest actually no tension equals no community. If we're not having some butting against heads and stuff, then actually you can't have real community. If you think about a family, there's tension. If you try to avoid that always, your family will get nowhere. You need to have that tension. And then they suggest, we want to try and get rid of crisis, but actually we need crisis points us to God. So we need tension and we need crisis, they say. And then they do something radical. They suggest maybe mission statements aren't the be-all and end-all, and aren't what we should focus on. Maybe instead we should focus on a watchword. And so for them, a watchword is a word or a saying that really speaks in. I keep thought a couple of times since reading this, part of the intentional interim ministry type stuff is trying to find the sacred story of the congregation, which is sort of finding the watchword. So I keep meaning to say to Lynn, well, what was the story you came up or was decided was Southside story? So it's that, how do we find that story? So they use the example of, let me see if I can find it, of Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights movement. And so here we go. Let me just quote them. One of the best illustrations of a watchword comes from the early days of the civil rights movement. It's January 27th, 1956. Martin Luther King Jr. is in his second year as pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He's been picked to help lead the bus boycotts, and things are not going well. King is pushing his people to do more, but the strong headwinds are creating little progress. And now the threats are becoming vicious. Late on January the 27th, the phone in King's house rings with his wife and infant child asleep. King answers it to hear the N-word. We're tired of your mess. And if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow up your house and blow your brains out. And though not the first threat in King's life, this one shakes him. Maybe it's because of his baby sleeping soundly in the next room, or maybe it's because the boycott is going poorly. King has a mission statement, something like bringing forth equity and civil rights. But that isn't enough. He needs a watchword. King sits at his kitchen table and prays. He confesses to God that his own action is failing and that he has no power to meet his mission. King cries out to God, Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right, but I'm afraid. I must confess. I'm losing my courage. In that moment of that confession, King hears God speak to him, telling him to stand up, that God will be his strength. King hears God say to him, when there is no way, I will make a way. And this becomes King's, and by extension, the civil rights movement's watchword. So when there is no way, I'll make a way. And so, yeah, wonderful to have mission statements, lovely. More people living and loving like Jesus, great. But what is that watchword for Southside? What is that message for us that we hold on to? What's that message of God that gives us strength? And they point out that will change over time. They finish the book, the last 2 chapters are sort of 2 different church experiences and using a watchword, and one talks about, one person came in and he really felt connected with feed my sheep. And so that sort of spread into the church, and then, they were trying to do potluck dinners, and the hall in the basement under the church wasn't very good. And how do we do it? And then one of the other local churches started was in like rented a strip mall. So they started encouraging food vans to come and park in the parking space and bring people in, and allowed them to have us to work. And also they got some income from the food vans renting spots in the thing. So that became, we can't do the fundraisers we used to, but we can do this. And so then this other church that had the Feed My Sheep thought, well, we'll buy a food van and we can go there and we can feed. And that worked well for a while. And then another minister sort of came in, and some things shifted to the point where the food van was no longer necessary, and they sold it to someone else. So that sense of, they can change. The other example was with a minister who'd been at a church for, quite a long time. I think it was over 10 years, in that sense of they'd had a couple of watchwords along the way. Yeah, so that thought of maybe it's not about mission statements, but it's about finding that word. What do you think of that? I've just blown your worlds apart because we've spent all this time talking about the importance of mission statements. And naughty. See, typical youth workers that are stirring things up.
Most mission statements people struggle with remembering. Was it a statement? Was it a vision? Was it an idea? Was it that? And then when they misquote it or add bits to it, and again, a watchword may well be the same, but if it's catchy enough and reflects your feeling, then that's probably really good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a mission statement will help other bits, but the watchword helps people pick things up more easily, all the better for it.
Yeah.
Another term, a watchword. I'm looking at this one and trying to work out what word will appear on that. Yep.
Just wait, you'll hear I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm sure. Watchword, Siri. No reply yet.
No reply. So, yeah, and yeah, that sense of mission is, about where are we going, whereas maybe the watchword is about what do we hold on to. And that's probably, easier to remember. I hold on to this. I'll remember it, whereas mission statement, that's where we're somewhere off there. Kylie, any thoughts?
Is it sort of like a mantra?
Yeah, I think so.
Something that you repeat when you needing encouragement and refocusing.
Yeah, it could definitely be that, I think.
And it always think like I've been doing it at school, but it reminds me of like advertising. If it can be said quick, short, and have a quick meaning, you're going to remember it a lot more than 5 sentences.
Yep. Yes.
But if it comes out of if it's one thing that can come out of the mission statement, then that's good as well.
Yes. Yeah, so you probably don't want it completely divided, but yeah. How do you have that grounding story that then empowers the... So yes, I've got to try and remember when Lynn gets back to what was the sacred story for Southside.
I'm sure. I'm sure a watchword nobody would question or argue with, or what does it mean? Whereas a mission statement just begins that process. Now, what does it really mean to? In fact, our congregation does that, and the ministerial team does that all the time.
Yes.
What does it mean to live and love? And you think, well, then that's a good mission statement. When we understand what we're trying to achieve, what our mission is, we don't understand it well enough. Whereas a watchword, I'm sure we'd have no, or in fact, as Martin Luther King Jr., 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words.
8 words.
So obviously it's a watch phrase.
Yes.
But no, that annoys me. It's got to be plural. Can't be just word.
Word, yes, watch words. But it's obviously something that will keep him going. Whereas his mission...
Sorry, I was just going to say, Andy's one of my Facebook friends, so you can message him and complain that it should be words and not word, and he's got it all wrong.
The grammar police.
So yes, I'm not sure. We've talked a bit about maybe it's sort of the wilderness wandering, connecting with Southside, but I don't know whether that's where Lynn's settled or not.
Wilderness wandering.
Still wandering.
It doesn't help me.
Yes, so maybe it's about God will provide in the uncertainty or something. I don't. There you go. There's a lovely.
We're starting to get somewhere with that one, but so we'll see. Yep.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, so there's some thinking. That's basically the book. So that's wonderful. I got it done in 2 weeks, 150 pages. It's a couple of ideas. I don't love books like that, as opposed to ones that you struggle through and are good but hurt the head. We're going to finish early so Rod can have a quick nap before Bible study.
Yep. Sounds good. Don't tell them that.
Don't tell. Bible study people, he was at it and ready for it. So thank you for joining us, everyone.